Hi there, Shaina Bilow here. In today's video, I am going to show you how to pick up stitches evenly around the neckline of this sweater. I'm going to begin on the back of the sweater, at the back shoulder seam, on the right shoulder as you wear it. The sweater was worked with 2 strands of yarn, so I'm going to hold those 2 strands of yarn together for the pickup. So I've got my yarn ready here. I've got my knitting needle ready as well. So starting right here at the seam, I'm going to begin by picking up stitches down this line. And I only have space for 2 stitches here. So there were a couple rows knitted right here. And I'm only going to pick up 2 stitches out of the 3 rows that I'm seeing right at this spot. So I insert my needle into the first row, 1 stitch in from the edge. I'm going to wrap my yarn around the knitting needle like I do when I knit, and then bring that wrapped stitch through to the front. To work that in English style, we're going to go into the next space, wrap the yarn around the needle like you're knitting, and bring through that new stitch, bring that up. Now the reason we're not picking up a lot of stitches immediately right here is because the shaping of our back neck has shifted a bit. So with this shaping, we have what I like to call stair steps, where you have different levels of stitches that have been worked. And with stair steps, what you have is a stitch rather than a row, which is what we were just picking up. So I'm going to shift over to picking up a stitch for every stitch. And the way that I figure out what I'm looking for here is I find the stitch, I look down into the fabric, I find the stitch that looks like a little letter V. And I'm going to insert my needle into the very topmost V, wrap my yarn as though I'm knitting, and bring that new stitch through. And again, you can pick up English style or continental. If you are an English knitter who also crochets, just make sure if you're picking up with the yarn in your left hand that you don't wrap the same way you do for crochet. We want a counterclockwise wrap here, not the crochet wrap, which is clockwise. All right, so I'm finding my next stitch. I'm in this column currently. I'm going to jump over 1 more column, insert my needle in, wrap the new stitch, and bring it through to the front. And then here's my very next column. Now I'm at a stair step, so I'm going to come down to this stitch here. So whenever you have a stair, on this side we're coming down, on this side we'll be walking up the stairs. What you want to do is find the topmost V to go into. So now this neck shaping was kind of interesting. It was, the sweater was done top down, so these are actually cast on stitches that I'm picking up in. So they're a little more flexible, I would say, than a standard bind-off edge, which you normally might encounter around a neck shaping. So I'm diving a little deeper than I normally would here so that I can get a nice clean looking stitch. So I'm not going up into this business. I'm going right here into the first clean looking V that's just below the cast on edge. So we're going into these V's across the front. Here we have a nice expanse of stitches that are just straight, no stair steps. Again, if you can't find that V, look down into the fabric and find the V and then trace it up. So I'm picking up 1 stitch after another until I get to the next stair step. And use your left hand to open up the fabric a bit. Don't be afraid of kind of pulling the fabric to open up the stitches so you can see where you need to put the needle. Oop. Knitting is quite flexible, so it's okay to kind of open it to get where you need to be. All right, so here I am. I'm at the stair steps again. And just for posterity, I'll switch over to English style picking up. So I've just picked up in this V here. I'm now going to scoot over to the next column. So I'm in this column here. I'm going to scoot to this column and go into the topmost clean looking V. So I don't like this one. It's not very clean. I'm going to go right in here. Wrap my yarn for knit and bring through. Here's my next V. Bring through. And now here I am. I'm at the side again. I'm going to pick up in this V here. And then I had originally picked up 2 stitches on this side, so I'm going to replicate that and just pick up 2 here. 1, 2. Now I'll be coming around the front of the sweater, and I'll be picking up the same way I did in the back. Right, so I have this expanse right here of straight stitches, of rows. So I'm going to stay inside this first clean looking column of stitches. Insert my needle in, wrap the yarn for knit and bring it through. In, wrap for knit, bring it through. I'm going to pick up 2 stitches and skip 1. So 1, 1, 2 in a row, and then skip a space. We do that because the tension of stitches does not match the tension of rows. So we have to account for that in the pickup. There's our second. And then normally we would skip, but right here we're now back to these stair steps that we had encountered on the back as well. So I'm going to start taking the V's. So anywhere that you have a bound off edge, you're picking up inside of a V, inside of a stitch. And anywhere that you are looking at rows, you're going to be picking up in a certain number of rows and then skipping a row. So in the case of this sweater, I'm picking up in 2 and then skipping the 3rd. So I have a 2-to-3 ratio on the rows and a 1-to-1 ratio on the stitches. So generally speaking, I don't even bother following a pattern when it tells me to pick up a certain number of stitches. I will work off of what the gauge is and how many stitches to rows I have, and I'll figure out that ratio instead and pick up what's appropriate for the fabric. But generally speaking, it's a 1-to-1 ratio for a stitch on top of a stitch, and either a 2-to-3, a 3-to-4, or a 4-to-5 ratio of stitches to rows when you're picking up. So with a little bit of knitting math, you can kind of figure out what's most appropriate for your pattern or for your pickup. All right, so I've come across the front. I didn't pay any special mind here to the cable. Sometimes cables have more stitches than other parts of the sweater might. So occasionally you have to pick up a couple extra stitches over top of your cable. In this case, for this sweater, I did not, because it doesn't suck in the fabric as much as other patterns may. All right, and then here we are back at the rows that we're working now, where we pick up 2 and skip 1. And I'm going to skip over that big hole because going into a big hole just makes it bigger. 2 and skip 1. 1, 2. Lovely. And I'm back to the beginning here. Now I'm going to count my stitches and make sure I have a multiple of 2. Since I'm working in knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, I will need a multiple of 2 stitches to get around. If I have an odd number of stitches here, I'll just decrease 1 stitch in the back of the sweater. If I have an even number, I won't change a thing. If you're picking up for a project that has, say, a multiple of 4 stitches, right, a knit 2, purl 2 ribbing or something like that, if you were short a stitch, you would increase one instead. You'd want to make sure you had a multiple of 4, and you would increase or decrease based on which one gets you to your 2 by 2 ribbing the closest. So if you were off by 1 stitch, you would increase or decrease that 1 stitch to get where you needed to be. Happy knitting!